The cold faded slowly, like waking from a dream that did not want to let go. Yuna felt her heart first, beating slow and steady, pushing warmth through her frozen blood. Then she felt her fingers tingling as feeling returned. Then her toes, her arms, her chest. Her chest. There should be pain there. There should be a hole where the weapon had burned through her. But when she tried to move, tried to breathe, there was only stiffness and cold dot light hit her eyes, bright and sharp. She blinked, trying to focus, trying to understand where she was. The last thing she remembered was falling, her children screaming, a man with cold eyes standing over her. Her children. Where were her children? She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Her throat was dry, frozen, useless. She tried to sit up, but her body would not obey. 15 years of sleep had turned her muscles to stone. Then hands touched her. Gentle hands, careful hands, lifting her, supporting her, helping her sit up. 3 pairs of golden eyes looked down at her, filled with tears, filled with something she had never thought she would see again. "Mother," a voice said. It was deep, rough, the voice of a grown man. But the word was the same, soft and careful, just like it had been the first time he said it. Yuna looked at the speaker. He was tall, much taller than her, with midnight fur that was darker than she remembered. Scars crossed his body, marks of battles and pain and years of survival. But his eyes, those golden eyes, she would know them anywhere. "Bora!" she whispered. Her voice cracked, but it worked. It finally worked. He made a sound, half laugh and half sob, and pulled her into his arms. She felt his tears on her skin, hot against the cold that still clung to her body. Another body pressed against her side, smaller but strong, and she smelled fur that was achingly familiar. "Aru," she said, and the figure holding her shook with silent crying. Then a third presence, quiet and still, pressing his forehead against her hand just like he had done so long ago in a crashed ship on a gray world. Timon. She could barely speak now. The tears were coming, thawing her as much as any machine could. My little time. They stayed like that for a long time. Yuna did not know how long. She did not care. She held her children, her cubs, her babies, and she let the years of frozen sleep wash away in the warmth of their embrace. Eventually, they helped her stand. Her legs shook, but they supported her. Her eyes adjusted to the light, and she saw the room around her for the first time. A vault filled with treasures, with stolen lives. And on the floor, tied and bleeding, an old man with cold eyes. The same man who had shot her. The same man who had taken her children. Yuna looked at him. He was pathetic now, all his power gone, all his money worthless. He stared back at her with something that might have been fear. "You," she said. Her voice was stronger now. "I remember you." Wansik tried to smile. It did not work. "You should thank me. I saved your life. I put you in that pod when you should have died. 15 years I kept you, waiting for this moment." "You kept her as a trophy," Bora growled. "Do not pretend you did her any favors." But Yuna was not listening. She was looking at her children, really looking at them for the first time. They were not cubs anymore. They were warriors, scarred and hardened, carrying weapons like they were born to them. What had happened to them? What had they suffered? "Tell me," she said. "Tell me everything." So they did. They told her about being sold, about being separated, about the years of pain and loneliness. They told her about the mines and the golden cage and the fighting pits. They told her about escaping, about finding each other, about building a war against the syndicate that had destroyed their lives. They told her about Yuna's teeth. When they were done, Yuna was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at each of them, one by one, and she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was something fiercer, something prouder. "You came for me," she said. "After everything, you came for me. You are our mother, Timon said simply. You protected us. You loved us. Did you think we would forget? Yuna reached out and touched his face, tracing the scars that marked his fur. I never expected you to come. I just wanted you to live, to be free, to be happy. We could not be happy without you, Haru said. We could not be free knowing you were here, frozen, alone. Bora stepped forward and put his hand on Yuna's shoulder. He was so tall now, so strong. She remembered him as a child, standing in front of his siblings, trying to be brave. Now he was a leader, a fighter, someone who would walk through fire and come out harder. We have work to finish, he said. The syndicate is broken, but not destroyed. Wansik was just ahead. There are others who need to pay for what was done. Yuna looked at the old slaver on the floor. And him? That is your choice, Timon said. He hurt you. He kept you. The revenge is yours if you want it. Yuna thought about it. She thought about the moment the weapon had hit her, the pain, the darkness. She thought about 15 years of cold sleep while her children suffered and fought and bled. She thought about all the lives this man had destroyed, all the families he had torn apart. Then she shook her head. No, she said, I will not kill him. He is not worth my hands. Wansik looked up, hope flickering in his cold eyes. Then you will let me go? You will show mercy? Yuna smiled at him. It was not a kind smile. Mercy? She turned away from him, putting her arm around Timon's shoulders. I said I will not kill you. I did not say anything about them. She walked toward the door, leaning on her children for support. Behind her, she heard Wansik start to beg, to plead, to offer money and power and anything they wanted. She did not look back. She heard the sound of blades, short and final. Then silence. Bora and Haru caught up to her a moment later. Their weapons were clean. Their eyes were calm. It is done, Bora said. Yuna nodded. She did not feel joy, exactly. She did not feel satisfaction. She just felt tired and old and ready to leave this place behind. They walked out of the fortress together, stepping over bodies and through ruined halls. Outside, the moon was cold and dark, but the stars were bright above them. Yuna stopped and looked up, breathing air that was not recycled, feeling wind that was not artificial. She was alive. Against all odds, against all reason, she was alive. A ship waited for them on the landing pad, something sleek and fast. Bora helped Yuna aboard, while Haru set the course and Timon secured the doors. As the engines hummed to life, Yuna found a seat by a window and watched the fortress grow smaller and smaller below. Where are we going? She asked. Haru looked back at her from the pilot's chair. Home. We found a place, a world where the syndicate never reached. We built something there, something good. Somewhere for people like us, people who have nowhere else to go. And then, Bora sat down beside her. Then we rest, we heal. We learn how to live again. Timon came and sat on her other side, pressing close like he had done when he was small. And we stay together, always. Yuna put her arms around both of them, pulling them close. Haru set the autopilot and came to join them, squeezing into the small space, making it work. 4 bodies, pressed together, holding on to each other like the universe might try to tear them apart again. It had tried. It had failed, because humans protect their cubs. And cubs never forget their mother. Yuna closed her eyes and let the warmth surround her. She thought about a small room on a gray planet, about blanket nests and bedtime stories, and 3 pairs of golden eyes looking at her with trust and love. She thought about the moment she had decided to keep them, to raise them, to call them hers. She had given up everything for them, her career, her safety, her life. And they had crossed the galaxy to give it back. This was what it meant to be a family. Not blood, not species, not the accident of birth. Just love, fierce and stubborn and impossible to kill. The ship flew on through the stars, carrying them toward home. And for the first time in 15 years, Una smiled. She was finally where she belonged. The first Keth outpost fell in silence. No alarms, no warnings, just 3 shadows moving through the dark. When the sun rose over the frozen moon, 20 Syndicate soldiers were dead, and the weapons vault was empty. They left a message painted on the wall in blood. Una's teeth. No one knew what it meant. Not yet. Bora, Haru, and Timin moved across the galaxy like a storm. They hit supply stations, intercepted shipments, freed slaves from transport ships. Every time, they left the same message. Every time, more of the Syndicate died. Word spread through the criminal underworld. Something was hunting the Keth. Something that could not be stopped, could not be bought, could not be scared away. Some said it was ghosts. Some said it was demons. Some said it was worse. One, Psyche heard the stories and laughed. He was old now, rich and fat from years of selling lives. He sat in his fortress on a private moon, surrounded by guards, thinking himself untouchable. 3 Tavi with a grudge? He had killed hundreds, maybe thousands. What were 3 more? But his men were dying. His operations were burning. And the name, Una, kept appearing, written in places where it should not be. Spoken by people who had no reason to know it. Deep in his fortress, in a room he rarely visited, something waited in the cold. The cubs, now warriors, had spent 2 years tracing the Syndicate's network. They had killed lieutenants and captains and lords, working their way up the ladder of power. But they were not just looking for Wansik. They were looking for something else too. It was Haru who found the records. Hidden in an encrypted file on a captured ship, a list of trophies that Wansik kept in his private collection. Stolen art, rare gems, exotic animals. And 1 human female, kept in cryo-storage, marked as special acquisition. Haru's hand shook as she read the words. He kept her, she whispered. He kept her alive. Bora grabbed the datapad and read it himself. His eyes went wide, then narrow, then cold. Why? Why would he keep her? Because she heard him, Tammin said. His voice was quiet, like it always was. But there was something in it now, something that sounded almost like hope. She killed 4 of his men. She stood against him. He wanted to own that. To have it frozen, helpless, forever his. The 3 of them stood in silence, thinking about what this meant. For 15 years, they had assumed their mother was dead. They had mourned her, honored her, built their war around her memory. But if she was alive, if she was waiting somewhere in the cold, "We go now," Bora said. It was not a question. Wansik's moon was well protected. Defense satellites circled it, scanning for any approaching ships. Ground batteries stood ready to destroy anything that came too close. Hundreds of guards patrolled the fortress, armed with the best weapons money could buy. It did not matter. Haru had spent 10 years learning how systems worked. She slipped through the satellite network like water through fingers, creating blind spots and false readings. Bora had spent 10 years learning how to kill efficiently, quickly, without noise or trace. Tammin had spent 10 years learning how to fight things bigger and stronger than himself and win. Together, they were something the galaxy had never seen before. They landed on the dark side of the moon, where the sensors were weak. They moved across the frozen surface on foot, 3 shadows in the endless night. When they reached the fortress walls, they did not stop. They climbed, silent and sure, claws finding grip in the ice-covered stone. The first guard died without knowing what hit him. Tammin was behind him, then past him, then gone, leaving only a body cooling in the cold air. The second guard managed to turn, managed to see Haru's golden eyes in the darkness, before her blade found his throat. They moved through the fortress like ghosts, room by room, level by level, leaving silence and death behind them. Guards fell. Officers fell. Anyone who stood between them and their mother fell. But they were not quiet about all of it. They wanted Wansik to know. They wanted him to feel what was coming, to understand that his walls and his weapons and his money meant nothing. They wanted him to be afraid. The alarm finally sounded when they reached the inner compound. Red lights flashed, sirens screamed, and soldiers came running from every direction. But it was too late. Yuna's teeth were already inside. Bora fought like a machine, his body moving through patterns learned in years of brutal labor. Every strike was perfect. Every kill was clean. He did not speak, did not shout. He simply worked, cutting through enemies like they were nothing. Haru was faster, dancing between soldiers, her twin blades singing in the air. She had learned to fight in secret, practicing in her golden cage when no one was watching. Now that practice paid off. Bodies fell around her like leaves in autumn. Taemin was the worst. He was the smallest of the three, but he had spent more time in battle than both of them combined. The fighting pits had taught him things that could not be unlearned. He moved through the soldiers like fire through dry grass, burning everything he touched. They reached the door to Wansik's private vault at the same moment. Behind them, the corridor was filled with bodies. Ahead of them, the last barrier between them and their mother. Bora looked at his siblings. They were all wounded, all bleeding, all exhausted. But their eyes were bright, their hearts were beating, and they were together. After 15 years, they were finally together. Ready? Yes. Haru nodded. Taemin just smiled, a small, rare smile that he had not shown since he was a child. They broke down the door. The vault was huge, filled with rows and rows of stolen treasures. Gold and silver and crystal shined in the artificial light. Paintings from dead worlds hung on the walls. Cages held creatures that had no business being in cages. And at the far end, standing next to a cryopod that hummed with quiet power, was Wansik. He was older than they remembered, fatter. His face was covered in lines and his hair had gone gray. But his eyes were the same, cold and empty, the eyes of a man who had never cared about anything but himself. "You," he said, looking at them. Recognition dawned slowly on his face. "The Cubs. From Varus 4? He laughed, an ugly sound that echoed in the vault. "I knew you would come eventually. I have been waiting. Then, you know why we are here," Bora said. One Sik gestured at the cryopod beside him. Through the frosted glass, they could see a shape, a human shape, frozen and still. "Your precious mother? She has been my favorite trophy for 15 years. Every time I look at her, I remember how she stood there, bleeding, thinking she could stop me." He smiled. "She could not. And neither can you." Taemin stepped forward. His eyes were fixed on the cryopod, on the face barely visible through the frost. It was her. It was really her. After all these years, after everything they had suffered, she was right there. "We are not going to stop you," Taemin said quietly. "We are going to end you." Wansik reached for his weapon. He was fast, faster than a man his age should be. But Taemin was faster. He had been training for this moment his entire life. The blade caught Wansik in the wrist, severing his hand before it could reach the gun. The old slaver screamed, falling to his knees, blood spraying across the polished floor. "That is for our mother," Taemin said. Haru stepped forward, her blade at Wansik's throat. "And this is for every child you ever stole." But she did not kill him. Not yet. That was not her choice to make. Instead, they tied him up and left him bleeding on the floor. Then, together, all three of them, they walked to the CRYO dash pod. They could see her now. Yuna, their mother. Her face was peaceful, frozen in the moment before death could take her. She looked exactly like she had 15 years ago, the day they were taken. The day she gave her life for them. Bora found the controls. He looked at his siblings. Together? They nodded. He pressed the button. The pod hissed. The frost began to fade. And somewhere inside, after 15 years of cold and darkness, a heart began to beat again. Yuna was coming home. The blood spread across the floor in a dark pool. It reached the blanket nest where 3 Tavy cubs had hidden, staining the soft fabric red. Yuna lay still, her eyes closed, her chest barely moving. The plasma cutter had rolled away from her hand. Its light gone dark. The captain of the Keth Syndicate stepped over her body like she was nothing. Like she was garbage in his way. He pointed at the cubs huddled in the corner, their golden eyes wide with horror, their small bodies shaking. "Take them," he said to his remaining men. "Put them with the others." Bora tried to fight. He was just a child, small and thin, but he threw himself at the first man who reached for him. His claws, still soft with youth, scratched at armor that did not care. The man laughed and hit him hard, sending him crashing against the wall. "Bora!" Haru screamed, running to her brother. Tainin did not move. He was staring at Yuna, at the woman who had saved them, who had fed them, who had called them her children. He was staring at the hole in her chest where the weapon had burned through. "Mother," he whispered. "Mother, please wake up." But she did not wake up. The slavers put chains on them. Real chains, metal and cold, locked around their small wrists. They were dragged out of the room, out of the place that had been home, out into the cold rain and the gray wind. Tamin looked back one last time. He saw Yuna lying there, still and silent, surrounded by the bodies of the men she had killed. She had fought so hard. She had given everything, and it was not enough. The slave ship was dark and smelled like fear. Other prisoners were already there, different species, all of them chained, all of them broken. The cubs were thrown into a corner with the others, their chains attached to the wall. Bora was hurt. His side where he had been hit was swelling, turning dark under his fur. But he did not cry. He sat against the wall and pulled his siblings close, holding them the way Yuna used to hold them during storms. "We will be okay," he said, but his voice was empty. He did not believe his own words. Haru was crying, soft tears running through her fur. "She is dead," she whispered. "Mother is dead." Timin said nothing. He had not spoken since they took him from the room. His golden eyes were strange, distant, looking at something no one else could see. Inside his heart, something was changing. Something was hardening. The soft, small child who had pressed his head against Yuna's hand was becoming someone else. Days passed on the slave ship. The cubs did not know how many. There was no light, no way to tell time. Food came sometimes, thrown at them like they were animals. Water was dirty and tasted like metal. But they survived. They held on to each other and they survived. The captain came to look at them once. He walked through the prisoner hold, checking his cargo, making sure nothing had died. When he reached the Tavy cubs, he stopped and smiled. "These ones will bring good money," he said to one of his men. "Tavy cubs are rare. Rich people like to keep them as pets." He laughed, the sound ugly in the dark. "Maybe I will keep one for myself. The small one, the quiet one. He has interesting eyes." Tamin looked up at the captain. For a moment, their eyes met. The captain was still smiling, pleased with himself, thinking about money and power and all the things he would buy with these children's lives. But Tamin was not thinking about any of that. He was thinking about a room small and warm, filled with blankets that smelled like safety. He was thinking about stories of green forests and blue oceans. He was thinking about a woman with kind eyes who had stood between him and death, who had said no when anyone else would have said yes. He was thinking about the word mother, and he was thinking about the word revenge. The ship eventually landed somewhere. The cubs did not know where. They were sold quickly, separated from each other, sent to different places across the galaxy. Bora went to a mining colony where slaves worked until they died. Haru was bought by a wealthy family who wanted something exotic to show their friends. Taemin was taken by a man who ran fighting pits, who saw something in his quiet eyes that promised violence. They did not see each other for many years. They did not know if the others were alive or dead. But they never forgot. Every night, in whatever hell they found themselves in, they remembered a small room on a gray planet, and a human woman who had loved them. Bora worked in the mines. His body grew strong from the endless labor, his hands hard from breaking rocks. The other slaves called him the Silent One, because he rarely spoke. But at night, when the lights were out and the guards were far away, he would close his eyes and remember. He remembered Yuna teaching him to count in the human language. 1, 2, 3. He remembered her hands, gentle on his fur when he was scared. He remembered standing in front of his siblings, trying to protect them, and seeing her do the same thing for all of them. He had failed to protect her. He had been too small, too weak. But he would not always be small. He would not always be weak. In his heart, a promise grew like fire. Haru lived in a golden cage. The family who bought her dressed her in expensive clothes and showed her off like a rare bird. But she was clever. She watched. She listened. She learned how to smile when she wanted to scream, how to look obedient when she was planning escape. She learned about the galaxy, about ships and systems and the ways that power moved between worlds. She learned who the Keth Syndicate really was, how big they were, how deep their roots went. She learned the name of the captain who had killed her mother. His name was Wansik, and Haru wrote it in her memory like a curse. Timon fought. That was what they made him do. Night after night, battle after battle. He fought against other slaves, against creatures twice his size, against opponents who wanted to kill him. And he won. He always won. They thought they had broken him. They thought he fought because he had nothing else, because the violence had eaten whatever was inside him. But they were wrong. Taemin fought because every enemy he faced wore the same face in his mind. Every victory was practice. Every kill was preparation. He was getting ready. 10 years passed. 15. The galaxy turned. Empires rose and fell. People lived and died and were forgotten. But 3 Tavi cubs, now grown, now changed, never forgot. And slowly, one by one, they found their way back to each other. Bora escaped the mines by killing 12 guards in one night. He walked out through the bodies and disappeared into the dark. Haru vanished from her golden cage one evening, leaving nothing behind but empty chains and a message written on the wall. "I am coming for you, Wansik." Taemin killed the man who owned him in the middle of a fighting pit. He stood over the body, blood on his claws, and looked up at the crowd who had cheered for his suffering. Then he walked out, and no one tried to stop him. They found each other on a space station at the edge of known space. 3 Tavi, scarred and hardened, carrying weapons and wearing armor and looking nothing like the frightened cubs who had huddled in a blanket nest so long ago. But when they saw each other, something softened. Bora opened his arms, and Haru ran into them. And Taemin pressed close, and for a moment they were children again, safe in their mother's room while the storm raged outside. "We have work to do," Bora said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know where he is," Haru answered. "I know where Wansik is." Taemin said nothing. He just touched the scar on his chest, the one that matched where Yuna had been shot, and nodded. They called themselves Yuna's teeth, because a mother's love has claws, and because they were going to tear the Keth Syndicate apart. The hunt had begun. 3 months passed on Varus 4. The seasons did not change much here, just endless gray skies and copper rain. But Yuna learned to find beauty in small things. The way the clouds turned purple at sunset. The sound of Bora, Haru, and Taemin laughing as they played in her small room. The feeling of small hands holding hers. The cubs were growing. They were healthier now, stronger. Their fur was thick and shiny, and their golden eyes were bright with life instead of fear. They had learned many words, enough to have simple conversations. Enough to tell Yuna that they loved her. Mother, Taemin called her one night, the words soft and careful in his mouth. Yuna had frozen, her heart stopping for a moment. She looked at the small creature with his midnight fur and his golden eyes, and she felt something break open inside her. Yes, she whispered back. I am your mother now. No one at the outpost knew about the cubs. Yuna was careful. She worked her shifts, she smiled at her colleagues, she did everything normal. But every moment, she was thinking about her children, waiting at home. Trusting her to come back, thought the trouble started with a message that it came through the emergency channel. Loud and harsh, cutting through the quiet evening. Yuna was walking home from the medical station when she heard it. All outpost residents were ordered to stay inside. Ships had been detected entering the system. Unknown ships. Possibly hostile. Yuna ran. She did not think about protocol or safety or anything else. She just ran, her boots hitting the wet ground, her breath burning in her chest. She had to get to her children. She reached her quarters and locked the door behind her. The cubs were scared. They could hear the alarm, could feel the tension in the air. Bora stood in front of Haru and Taemin, just like he had done in the crashed ship all those months ago. Still protecting. Always protecting. It will be okay, Yuna said, pulling them close. I will keep you safe. But she did not know if that was true. The ships landed 2 hours later. From her window, Yuna could see them, big and dark and ugly, settling on the plain outside the outpost. Men came out of them, carrying weapons, wearing armor that looked worn and patched. These were not soldiers. These were not official. These were something worse. Slavers. The word spread through the outpost like poison. The Keth Syndicate, criminals who took people and sold them to the highest bidder. They had come for the miners, for the workers, for anyone they could grab. But that was not all they wanted. The knock on Yuna's door came at midnight. She was not sleeping. The cubs were huddled in their blanket nest, quiet and still, trying to be invisible. Yuna stood by the door, her hand on the plasma cutter she had taken from the maintenance closet. It was a tool, not a weapon, but it could burn through metal. It could burn through flesh. Open up, a voice said. It was rough, like rocks grinding together. We know what you have in there. Yuna did not move. Her heart was beating so hard, she thought it might break through her chest. The Tavi cubs, the voice continued. We tracked their ship here. We know they survived. Hand them over, and we let you live. Behind her, Taemin made a small sound of fear. Haru pressed closer to Bora, who stood rigid, his golden eyes fixed on the door. They understood. They understood everything. Yuna thought about her life. Her small room, her simple job, her quiet days. She thought about Earth, about the family she had left behind, about all the things she would never see again. She thought about opening the door, stepping aside, letting these men take her children. No. The word was clear in her mind, solid like stone. No, she would not do it. She could not do it. They are mine, she said, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. They are my children, and you will not take them. There was silence on the other side of the door. Then laughter, ugly and mean. Your children? Human. They are not even your species. They are cargo. They are money. Step aside, or we will make you step aside." Yuna lifted the plasma cutter. She pressed the button and the blade hummed to life, glowing orange-white, hot enough to cut through starship hull. "Try," she said. The door exploded inward. Yuna was thrown back, hitting the wall hard. But she did not drop the cutter. She rolled, came up on her feet, and swung. The first man screamed as the blade caught his arm. He fell back, and another took his place, firing a weapon that missed Yuna by inches. She ducked, moved forward, swung again. This one fell and did not get up. More men came. Yuna lost count. She was not a fighter, not a soldier, not trained for this. But she had something they did not have. She had something to protect. The third man died trying to reach the cubs. The fourth managed to hit Yuna in the shoulder, a glancing blow that sent fire through her body. But she kept moving, kept fighting, kept standing between her children and death. Then the captain came in. He was bigger than the others. His face scarred, his eyes cold like deep space. He looked at Yuna, bleeding and panting, still holding the plasma cutter, still standing. He looked at the bodies of his men on the floor, and he smiled. "Impressive," he said. "For a human." Yuna said nothing. She was tired, so tired. Her shoulder was screaming with pain, and she could feel blood running down her arm. But she did not move. She would not move. "4 of my men," the captain continued, walking closer. "4 men dead because of 3 little animals. Do you know how much trouble you have caused me?" "Not enough," Yuna said. The captain's smile faded. He raised his weapon, a big ugly thing that hummed with power. "Last chance," he said. "Step aside." Behind her, Yuna heard Timon crying. She heard Haru whispering something in the Tavi language. She heard Bora, brave little Bora, growling like a wild thing, ready to fight even though he was just a child. She thought about all the moments that had led to this. Finding them in the wreckage, carrying them home, teaching them words, hearing them call her mother Dot. She thought about the life she could have lived if she had just followed the rules. Safe, simple, empty. No, this was better. This was right. Whatever happened next, she had done something that mattered. She had loved, and she had been loved, and she had fought for something worth fighting for. Yuna smiled. It hurt, but she smiled. "No," she said. The captain fired. The shot hit her in the chest, throwing her backward. She fell, and the plasma cutter fell from her hand, and the world went dark and quiet. But even as she fell, even as the pain exploded through her body, she heard her children screaming. "Mother! Mother!" They were calling for her. They were crying for her. And she could not answer. The last thing Yuna heard before the darkness took her was Taman, her smallest one, screaming a word he had learned from her stories. Yuna. Yuna. It was the only human word they knew. And then there was nothing. The rain on Varus 4 was not like rain on Earth. It fell sideways, pushed by winds that never stopped, and it smelled like copper and old metal. Yuna had been on this planet for 3 years now, and she still was not used to it. She pulled her jacket tighter and walked faster toward the medical station. Yuna was not a soldier. She was a medic, trained to fix broken bones and treat infections. The frontier outpost needed doctors more than it needed guns, they told her. So here she was, far from home, far from the green hills of her childhood, healing miners and engineers who worked the deep tunnels of this gray world. The explosion happened just as she reached the door of her quarters. The sound was huge, like thunder breaking right above her head. Yuna dropped to the ground, her heart beating fast. She looked up and saw fire in the sky. A ship was falling, burning, leaving a trail of black smoke across the orange clouds. It crashed somewhere beyond the eastern ridge, maybe 2 kilometers away. Yuna waited for the alarm to sound, for the security teams to move. But the outpost was small, and most of the workers were deep underground in the mines. Only a handful of people lived on the surface. She made a decision. She grabbed her medical bag and started running. The crash site was worse than she expected. The ship had broken into 3 pieces when it hit the ground. Metal was scattered everywhere, still hot, still smoking. Yuna moved carefully, looking for survivors. She called out, but her voice was lost in the wind. Then she heard it. A small sound like crying. It came from inside the largest piece of the wreckage. Yuna climbed through a hole in the metal wall. Inside, the ship was dark and filled with smoke. She turned on her flashlight and moved forward, following the sound. She found them in what must have been a storage room. 3 small creatures huddled together in the corner. They had fur the color of midnight, soft and thick. Their eyes were huge, golden like coins, and filled with fear. They were about the size of human children, maybe 4 or 5 years old. But they were not human. Yuna recognized them from the training files. Tavi. They were called Tavi, a species that lived on the outer rim. Peaceful, known for their music and their art. What were Tavi children doing on a crashed ship in the middle of nowhere? The smallest one was hurt. Yuna could see blood on its leg, dark against the blue-black fur. She moved slowly, keeping her hands visible, making herself small and soft. "It is okay," she said, even though she knew they could not understand her words. "I am not going to hurt you." The Tavi cubs watched her with those big golden eyes. They were shaking. One of them, the largest, moved in front of the others, protecting them. Even scared, even hurt, it was trying to be brave. Yuna felt something twist in her chest. She had no children of her own. She had never wanted them, not really. But looking at these 3 small creatures, alone and afraid, she felt something old and deep wake up inside her. She opened her bag and took out bandages, antiseptic, pain medication. She worked slowly, showing them each item before she used it. The injured cub whimpered when she cleaned the wound, but it did not try to run. Its siblings pressed close, watching everything she did. When she was done, Yuna sat back and waited. The cubs looked at each other, communicating in a way she could not understand. Then the smallest one, the one she had just bandaged, crawled forward and pressed its head against her hand. Yuna felt tears in her eyes. She did not know why. She just knew that she could not leave them here. Getting them back to the outpost was not easy. The cubs were weak and scared, and they did not want to go outside where the wind was loud and the rain was cold. But Yuna was patient. She carried the smallest one and led the other 2 by hand, walking slowly through the mud and the rocks. Her quarters were small. Just 1 room with a bed, a desk, a tiny kitchen area, and a bathroom. It was not made for 4 people. But Yuna did not care. She spread blankets on the floor and made a nest for the cubs. She gave them water and found some protein bars that they could eat. The cubs ate everything. They must have been starving. When they were full, they curled up together in the blanket nest, their bodies pressed close, their golden eyes finally closing. Yuna sat in her chair and watched them sleep. She knew she was breaking rules. The outpost had protocols about alien contact, about interference with other species. She was supposed to report this, call the authorities, hand the cubs over to whatever government office handled such things. But she remembered the largest cub, standing in front of its siblings, trying to protect them. She remembered the smallest one pressing its head against her hand. She remembered the fear in their eyes, and then the trust. No, she would not call anyone. Not yet. The next few days were hard. Yuna had to work at the medical station, so she left the cubs alone in her quarters with food and water and blankets. Every time she came home, she was afraid they would be gone or hurt or discovered. But every time, they were waiting for her, their golden eyes bright, their small bodies pressing against her legs in greeting. They learned fast. Within a week, they understood simple words: food, water, sleep. Yuna. They called her Yuna, repeating the sound she made when she pointed at herself. They could not say it perfectly. It came out more like Yuna, soft and musical. She named them too. The largest one, the protector, she called Bora. The middle one, curious and quick, she called Haru. The smallest, the one she had bandaged first, she called Taemin. At night, when the wind howled outside and the rain beat against the walls, Yuna would sit with her cubs. They would press close to her, seeking warmth, seeking safety. And she would tell them stories about Earth, about green forests and blue oceans, about a sun that was yellow and warm. She knew this could not last forever. Someone would find out. Someone would come. But for now, in this small room on a gray planet far from home, Yuna had found something she never expected. She had found a family, and she would do anything to protect them.